Check, check, check. Testing, testing, testing. So this one's follow-up from the last one.
Fabulous. How come I can hear you now?
Check, check, check.
It's great.
Got me?
Good. I've eaten something that I'm allergic to, and I'm just like,
Yeah?
God, it happens with artificial sweeteners like crazy.
Weird.
So I went to a tasting last night.
Oh, yum.
Something must have had something in it because my eyes are like.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about that Saskatoon.
Love it.
I think I'm going to do it. I was looking at the menu of everything last night.
It's good, and it's easy.
Yeah, and it's...
I love it. Now, what I do in the morning, I make my own breakfast. I usually don't buy theirs.
Right.
And that's only because I eat a lot of egg whites and oatmeal.
Right.
It's just, it's easy
Which is
for me
still
here.
really good for you.
They make great food. Their breakfast like casseroles are awesome, and we're doing Tim Talk.
You know what? I tried to start a podcast called Tim Talk off of TED Talk, but it was already taken. Like when I started a podcast like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I wanted to call it Tim Talk.
You can still call it that. You wouldn't. I mean, you can call it, I think, whatever you want, but your website, your social media would have to have some kind of variation on that.
That's true. Yeah.
But it's just me.
I just didn't want to get in trouble. Get a cease and desist order.
Yeah, probably. Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Hi there, it's Heidi Aiken with Tim Wadsworth, who is the youth pastor at
North Hills Church.
North Hills Church.
Yes.
And we have had kind of this running series of youth and parenting and talking to your kids, and I'm excited about today's topic.
Yes, so today's topic is follow-up from when we were last together, and pretty much it's how to have hard conversations with your kids. And this can vary from any age. I mean, this can be applicable to the toddler, to the elementary school, all the way to the middle school, high school. I would even say college, and maybe even well beyond that. It's very applicable depending on the age and the appropriateness. And so I think it would be fun for us to take a few minutes and talk about how we as parents, whether you're a coach or a mentor, grandma, grandpa, whoever you are, these are some helpful things to consider when you're having those hard conversations. And I would also say awkward conversations.
I was going to say, so what constitutes a hard conversation? Because sometimes just getting their child's attention is difficult.
Right. So I would say hard conversation could fall into my 5-year-old, Judah, our fish just died.
Oh.
Okay, so in our world, we were thankful that George died. But in Judah's world, we're going to have a hard conversation of where is George? George is no longer with us. All the way to maybe an awkward conversation when you have that 11-year-old and it's time for the talk, which is like the number one thing parents want to avoid like the plague. Or it could be all the way, I've had to sit in some meetings where moms and dads have had to break the news to their kids that one parent has had an affair on the other one. So hard conversations, awkward conversations, and just the normal day-to-day stuff that has to happen. So one thing that we need to be doing consistently to set us up for success as parents is open dialogue 24/7. So it's going to be really weird if you want to have open dialogue on something when you're a closed book Monday through Friday. And then Saturday comes and you want to have this open dialogue on something, and normally the kid is going to be thinking, well, where have you been? And where were you on Thursday when these things were not open dialogue?
And they haven't developed that comfort level with you Monday through Friday, so why should it be any different on a Saturday or Sunday?
I'm with you. Yeah, like I remember sometimes my parents would be like, hey, Tim, we need to talk.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and that was never good.
That's scary.
You know, but I think one of the things we need to be doing as parents, or whatever type of influence you have, is to always say, hey, let's talk. And so it doesn't make them defensive. Like they know that's a normal thing. I always tell fathers of daughters, date your daughters. Like you need to have a time consistently every week, if you can, to have open dialogue with them. You're always available. So when you are busy on Friday and they want to talk, they know that if they kind of get shut down, well, Dad's not an awful person. I know I have him on Tuesday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And you can even say as a parent, hey, save it for Tuesday morning when it's just me and you, and you will have all my attention.
But sometimes a child needs you right then and there.
Yeah, I know.
They have to be able to communicate that, though, too. That
I'm
this
with
is
you.
Really an important time, Dad. I really have to talk today.
Yes, and I would say have good discernment. Like, no one knows your kids better than you do. So your parent gauge needs to be going off with that. So I would just encourage, in order for these next 5 things we're going to talk about, open dialogue, 24/7, you always got to be available. Number 1, the first thing we need to do with hard conversations is make sure the time is right. Like, the appropriateness of going to your kid or going to whoever to have these hard conversations, you need as the parent to realize when is a good time to go. I do this at work all the time. I'm gauging the boss man. I'm gauging whoever it is if I need to have a hard conversation on their mood for the day, whatever the case may be. You got to use your brain.
Oh, this isn't a good time to ask for a raise.
It's never a good time to do that. No, but like as parents, you gotta okay, if they were in school all day and then they went to sports practice and they came home, they haven't had dinner, it's 8:00, that's not the time.
Mm-hmm.
Save it for when they're a little more rested, when you've kind of buttered them up, so to say. Like, all that to say, every parent will know the appropriateness with this, but we need to keep that at the forefront of our mind. You gotta make sure the time is right. And I've noticed with most kids, the reaction sometimes that they give their parents that seems alarming was just based off of that. It's like they never want to listen. They always seem so distant and far off. Well, I normally ask, what time do you normally do this? Oh, on the way to school. I've noticed on the way to school is generally not the best time. Now, take advantage of times in the car because they are stuck. They can't really go anywhere. But normally what's going through their mind is the test they're going to have in an hour, the friend drama they have going over here, the big game they have coming up that evening is generally very overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So
one thing I did read too, this has been ages ago, is a great time to talk with your child is when you ask them to take a walk. And
yes.
It's not quite dark and you're not facing each other. And it's easier for them to talk to you.
I love that.
When they're not looking you in the eye.
Not so intimidating.
Not so intimidating. And it's not right in their face. They start to chat.
Yep.
And not just, have that talk.
Yeah.
And it allows you to be more comfortable too, because as you point out, it's not just the kids that have a hard time talking, it's the parents too.
Yes, and we're going to cover that.
Yeah.
Number 2, Heidi, I'm glad you said that, is rehearse beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to have a hard conversation, whatever it is that you need to talk about with your kids, make sure the time is right. And number 2, make sure you have your ducks in a row. Like, don't be, I don't know, I guess the word would be don't be oblivious to understanding that your words matter. Like, your words carry a weight that is huge to your kids. So if you're going in there and just kind of shooting from the hip, that's not good. Like, you need to know what you're doing, how you're saying it. Like, I'm a pastor, so I preach. I don't just get up and wing it. I have an outline. I practice it in front of a mirror. I make sure I understand my body language. I make sure not to be fake or not to be scripted, but you at least need to have a game plan on what it is that you're going to talk about to your kids. You don't want to dig a hole and try and get yourself out of that hole.
That reminds me of the time I told my daughter I was so upset with her. I'm like, do not listen to anything I say and don't watch anything I do. And just everything was coming out wrong. And I was digging that hole and my foot went deeper in my mouth. And literally I just took myself out to the dark garage, closed the door and stood there by myself in the dark thinking, what have I just done? All that credibility I was trying to, and respect I was trying to garner just boom, right out the door.
It's tough. It's definitely tough. And I know the parents thinking, I don't even have time for laundry or for cooking dinner. Like, how do I have time to rehearse? This doesn't take long. Just a minute or two. Collect yourselves. Get your thoughts together and recognize how your kid is wired and what's going to serve them best. So, number 1, time is right. Number 2, rehearse beforehand. Number 3, you got to speak on their level. So, you don't want to speak beneath their level. You don't want to go over their level. You want to come to them right at their level. So, I got a 5-year-old, Okay? I didn't look at my 5-year-old and talk on my level. Like, Judah, fish die all the time. We'll go buy a new one. Which is exactly what I told Rachel. Like, oh, bummer, George is gone. I didn't even want to tell him. I was like, look, let's go get another betta fish. They all look the same. Chuck them in there. Judah and Levi won't even know the difference.
Right.
But we wanted to seize this as an opportunity. So I sat down. I made sure to get on not only his level mentally, but his level physically. Sometimes I think that's a big deal. Take a knee. Look him in the eye. Go down on their level and talk in their language. Now, he's 5. I didn't talk to him like he was 3, but I didn't talk to him like he was 9. I know this is crazy. I talked to him like he was a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And so I used language that was a little easier for him to understand. So I'll even go on the other end. If you have an 18-year-old, please don't talk to them like they're 12. Like, get on their level. If they're 17, 18, treat them like the adult that the state of South Carolina is going to treat them when they turn 18. So I've seen some parents talk to a 9-year-old and they're talking to them like they're 30. And it boggles my mind. But then I'll see some parents talk to the 19-year-old like they're 12. And I just want to like scream inside and say, you're talking to them not on their level. Like, talk to them and talk to them in the way you want to see them go. So yeah, I'm going to talk to Judah like he's a 5-year-old, but I'm also going to try and throw some things in there where we can mature and we can go to. So number 3, speak on their level. And number 4, validate in the moment and admit when you don't know something. So again, validate in the moment means this. Hey, I know what you're hearing is really hard. You're validating their emotions. If they get overwhelmed, you can say, I get it. This is overwhelming. So many times as parents, we want to squash emotions because if emotions get a little too high, we feel like we're losing control. This is getting too much for us. And so we say, no, don't cry. Don't this. I'm trying to learn this with my wife. Like, this is good for marital stuff. Like, sometimes you just need to validate. And I looked at Judah and I was like, buddy, and when he cried, buddy, I know this is hard. Oh man, Dad hurts with you. Sometimes that means more to them than any wisdom, any life and death, there's heaven and, whatever it is we're trying to do to validate the situation. Sometimes just understanding their emotions, they'll remember that when they're 50 years old. And the words we said, they won't remember that. And then a second part to number 4 is if they ask a question and you don't know, it's okay to tell them, I don't know. But you can say, let's learn that together. Or, hey, let me talk to so-and-so and I'll get back to you. Like, I think there's something very human in hearing our parents, our coaches, our mentors say, I don't know. Because what you're doing is you're practicing for them the humility of not knowing. But let me get back to you. Or, hey, let's follow up. Let's read this book together. Let's watch this show. Let's do these things and process this together. Again, you're kind of getting on their level. You're not acting like you're a know-it-all. You're not acting like you're superior to them. Because, again, if you're trying to make open dialogue be 24/7, they've got to know that's on the table to have this a part of their lifestyle. So I think as people who are loving the next generation, we got to validate them when it's appropriate. Sometimes you don't need to validate. Again, if they're 19 and they're acting 12, don't validate that. Again, I think have the discernment and the appropriateness to say, okay, I can validate this. And I can at least let them know, I'm with you. This is hard. Or, hey, guys, I get it. The talk is awkward, but we got to have it. And be unapologetic about whatever it is you're talking about. But again, admit when you don't know something. And that kind of is what we're going to wrap up with. Number 5, you got to check back in. So if I have a hard conversation with you, Heidi, and I know, okay, this can either go one of 2 ways, and let's say we have a great conversation, I'm going to make sure to follow up with you and just say, hey, thanks for your time last week. So how have you been processing this? And you might get a completely different response after 7 days of them sleeping on it, thinking about it. So many times I've done that with Rachel, my wife, and say, hey, okay, it's been a week since we talked about this hard conversation. Where are we at? And she said, you know what? I've had time to think about it. I'm really sorry for the way I responded. Tim, you're a great husband. We love you. I'm just kidding. That's normally not what happens.
Is that script? Is that number 6?
Yeah, I did not rehearse that part. No, she normally, she feels served by it, and I know if I can put closure to it. Sometimes they'll say things, and you're like, man, this isn't done. Like, this one hard conversation might need to have 5.
Yeah.
But so many times, especially as men, I want to have a conversation, get it done, move on. And so many times we leave people in the dust. We have a hard conversation, we bulldoze them, we overwhelm them, and we move on, but they haven't.
Good point. I mean, you've handled it in your mind, but unfortunately they haven't reconciled what they need to in their mind.
Yeah.
So for them, it's still an issue.
Yep.
And so you get a cold shoulder, you get the eye roll.
Bingo.
And all of a sudden you're wondering, well, I thought this was all figured out.
Yeah, and you can learn by asking questions. And so many times, if I go to my 2 boys and follow up, they'll say things that humble me that had nothing to do with the conversation. Like, Daddy, why? Yeah, I understand, but why do you yell?
Mm-hmm.
Which I didn't yell, because I want to be like, I'll show you yelling. In their 5-year-old, 3-year-old language, I think what they're saying is, you talked scary to me.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me like you're in a business meeting. And I learned, oh, okay, well, next time I do it, I'll make sure my eyes are wider, because sometimes if I'm having a hard conversation, body language is key. Because my brow will get all scrunchy,
Serious.
and I look like I'm angry. And to the adult, they know, okay, this is how Tim is wired.
Right,
But
he's
to the
thoughtful.
Yeah, but to the 9-year-old, the 12-year-old, they might think, right. So body language is big. I think we can learn a lot by checking back in. And last but not least, we've got to learn how to ask open-ended questions. So when you follow up, don't let them get away with yes or no, close-ended questions.
What are those questions?
I know.
have tried.
Yeah.
Because I'll think, this is what I'm going to talk to crew about. And I find myself, well, I'm going to ask this, and he's going to say yes. Or he's going to say no. So I have to try to find a way to create the conversation and
Yes.
create the question. And
Yeah.
it takes a lot of thought.
It really does. and I think the best way to do the who, what, where, when, how kind of questions, those are harder to just go, yep, no. So obviously when I pick up Judah, how was school? It good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what was good about it? And I think just whatever the conversation is, I think you'll be able to pinpoint ways to get them talking. So again, I think as we help them verbally process out loud, yeah, they might mean it when they say, "No, Dad, I'm good." Okay. Well, buddy, what does that mean? You're good. Now you can't say yes or no to that. Or I like this one. This is a brilliant one. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Okay. So no, it was a good day. I mean, I had fun, and okay. Tell me more.
Yeah.
And they go, and it's literally you going, no. It's like the ... in a text, something more is coming. And so I try and do that with people. Like, oh man, I wasn't really happy with this, or I wish you guys would do this. And so instead of getting defensive, I go, okay, well, tell me more. What do you mean? And then normally this is what I love. If you let people go through the tell me more, sometimes they'll correct themselves, or sometimes they'll answer the question for themselves. So I had an upset parent in our youth group about something a month ago, and I kept doing the tell me more. What exactly do you mean by this? And the more she was talking, she was like, now that I hear myself processing this is pretty dumb.
It's not a problem after all.
Yeah. And you're like, well, no, what you have to say is super important to me, but I love that you were able to come to that conclusion. And they're almost like patting you on the back, like, hey, thanks for talking. You're like, I didn't really talk. You did 95% of the talking, but what we're trying to do is draw the answers out and not put the answers in, which there's a time of doing that for influencing, educating, no doubt. I think it's like a sponge analogy. Sometimes you got to wring out the sponge and see what all is in there, because if you don't, it kind of gets nasty and smelly and old and nasty. So that's what I try and do with my boys. How can I sponge it out and then hear what they're saying? And then as their coach, as their dad, well, then I know where they're still immature, where they're mature, and where areas that we can work on. So, okay, kind of recap. Open dialogue 24/7. Got to be available. You've got to have conversations with them all the time. So I love Jesus. I work at a church. That would be kind of weird if I didn't love Jesus and worked at a church. But I don't want my boys to only hear me talk about Jesus on Sunday morning. I want them to hear me talk about Jesus on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's just talk about Jesus. Like, I don't want them to say, man, he was kind of that pastor that just went and he knew how to turn it on and he knew how to be a pastor, but we never heard about Jesus anytime during the week. We never talked to Jesus. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my world. I want it to be a lifestyle. I want it to be something where they can come and talk to me about Jesus anytime they want. And we're not in a church building.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, a part of the open dialogue, we have to make sure that we don't get angry. Because if you get angry or you get mad, they ain't coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, as someone who works primarily with middle and high school students, if they know you have a temper, if they know that you don't know how to respond, you just react, they're going to go to other people every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to know you're the safest person in their corner. Now, are there going to be consequences? Are you going to have to punish? Of course. But sometimes that comes in the follow-up. Like, there have been times I have heard people share things with me and I want to respond in a not so great way. It's almost like the reaction's coming and I think you've got to respond this way. And then when you see them tomorrow, when you do the follow-up,
mm-hmm.
you can say, hey, first off, thanks for coming to me. Like, thanks for the courage that you had to share that with me. Remember, I love you. I'm for you. I'm in your corner. But here's the deal. We might need to take a break from your phone.
Yeah.
And they don't think you're just reacting, being all emotional and in the moment. You know, you're kind of coming level-headed with them.
Mm-hmm.
After I've talked with your mom or after I've prayed about it, because we love you, buddy, we think this is what needs to happen. So again, open dialogue, whatever it is, you as a parent, whether you love Jesus or whether you don't, you've got to create an atmosphere where, I saw a bumper sticker on someone's car one time that I loved, and it said, live in a way that when you die, people don't lie at your funeral.
Oh my goodness.
Live in such a way where if you die, you don't have to lie at their funeral. Like, there are many times I've been at people's funerals and I've heard people from stage talking and I'm like, did we know 2 different people?
I was going to say, who are they talking about?
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Yeah, like, you want people to get up and say, look, my dad was the real deal.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, the way he treated this person was the way he treated that person. He was consistent. He was loving. Like, what you saw was what he was behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And so we need to have that consistency, that integrity of doing that. So that in my opinion would be a healthy open dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just need to wait for them to come to you. I've done that before. Like, okay, if I know about something or I want to talk about something, give them time to come and then have that deadline in your mind. Okay, I need to go and talk to my kid about this, but have that open dialogue. Make sure the time is right. You got to make sure that you are getting them at a good time where they're going to respond and you're setting your family up for success. Mm-hmm. The last thing you need is a blow-up fight. Like, the last thing you need is for your kid, and sometimes it's okay to get shot down. Hey, bud, let's talk. Oh, Dad, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Buddy, that's okay. Can we get a rain check? A rain check is that's also what we teach in premarital when it comes to the topic of sex. Like, if you get shot down, it is what it is. Get the rain check, and we honor rain checks. Okay? So the language in our family is, okay, no, I want to honor the way you're feeling, and I'm with you. Finish that video game, but win. Mm-hmm. And when we figure out the win, we honor the win, the W-H-E-N, not the win.
Yeah.
W-N. But that's one thing in our family we don't break. So that was the last thing I had in my notes with the time is right. That is fine if you get shot down. Don't be proud. Don't be the dad who's like, no, when I come and bang on your door, we're talking when I want to. You know, that's dumb.
I think sometimes in your head you're already feeling it's going to go this way and this is how you see it, and in reality it's not going to be anything like that.
Yes.
So don't get upset if it doesn't turn out the way that you exactly planned it, because you have kind of rehearsed it in your head, right?
Yep.
But sometimes, expect the unexpected.
Don't romanticize it. Mm-hmm. It might not end with kisses. It might not end with hugs. But again, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Yeah. You got to have the end goal in mind. You got to love them through it. Rehearse beforehand. Got to have a game plan. Got to speak on their level. If they're 5, talk to them like they're 5. If they're 20, talk to them like they're an adult and they're 20 years old. And don't be apologetic for it. because the world isn't going to be apologetic for it.
Mm-mm.
So you got to do what you got to do. Number 4, got to validate those emotions. You got to understand and hurt with them. Even if you think it's stupid, even if you think this is silly, you cannot say that.
Mm-mm.
You just can't. And I get it. There's so many times I'm like, guys, come on. Or
it doesn't matter who goes first through the door, but it does sometimes.
Right. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. So you got to validate. It's okay if you don't know something. It is okay to admit,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll get back to you. Number 5, we got to check back in. We got to be following up and ask those open-ended questions.
Yeah.
Not yes or no's. We got to make sure that we are doing what we got to do to get conversation talking. So I think if you kind of live and die by this, I think having hard conversations, awkward conversations, mundane conversations will go much better.
Well, I'll tell you, you've already brought up our next topic,
Yeah.
which is going to be how to handle this with a spouse or a girlfriend.
Oh, mercy.
And
Yeah.
regardless of your age, whether you've been married forever or you're just starting to date,
Yeah.
there's some basic ground rules. Just
Let's
like
do
in
it.
this, how to talk to your child, how to have those hard conversations, but you make it easier.
Yeah, and I know every female listening is probably like, well, I want his wife to come in, or it's okay, we got you, Heidi.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I want to hear from his wife.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
No, stay home, Rachel. She'll call me out.
That was number 6. You are perfect. You are wonderful.
Atta girl.
Great
I like that
husband.
one. That was actually in bold in my
That's funny.
notes. Yeah.
Tim Wadsworth with North Hills Church, a youth pastor there. Tell us how folks can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so AliveStudentMinistry.com will give you all the information you need to know about our youth group and our ministry and how your kid can get involved. This is middle and high school students. Middle school is 7th and 8th grade. High school is 9th through 12th grade. And if you want to know a little bit more about me personally, you can go to my website, timwadsworth.com. And if you're really bored, you can just kind of scroll through there. I do have some of my sermons up, just some stuff that if you just want more things like this to listen to, you can find it there.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tim, for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to having you back.
Yes.
And this is Heidi Aiken, and I will be back next week.
Way to go.
Boom! You were like, I looked, I'm like, okay.